Hello, you're watching World Talks on DVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Now, following a major energy sector corruption probe that uncovered $100 million in kickbacks, Ukraine's state-owned nuclear company Energoatom, President Zelenskyy has announced a comprehensive overhaul of key state energy enterprises. Now, the scandal involving high-profile figures, including Tymur Mindich, a former co-owner of Zelenskyy's media company, has shaken public trust and raised concerns about governance during wartime. Joining us now to discuss the implications is Bartłomiej Kot, director of the Warsaw Office of the Aspen Institute Central Europe. Good to have you back at DVP World.
Good morning.
So looking at these sweeping reforms President Zelenskyy announced just over the last sort of 48 hours, Energoatom, another Ukraine, Naftogaz, looking at these announcements, planned supervisory board changes, in your mind, is that enough to deal with this crisis?
Absolutely not, for one particular reason. I guess this is actually a move to limit the whole corruption scandal only to the energy sector, and to try to label that as the corruption that happened in the energy sector, and all the people who were involved in that were actually connected to these companies, and that's it, simply speaking. So it's like pushing away the responsibility that lies somewhere within the institutions of the state, the relationship between the key stakeholders, and limit that only to one particular place in the Ukrainian state, which is, as I said, unfair, which is also limiting, and which, in my opinion, would not bring enough of the spotlight that people, both in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine, would like to hear about and watch what is happening there in the Ukrainian state. But I also understand that it is necessary for especially the Western audiences. A move that President Zelenskyy makes is, in my opinion, very much targeted to all those who are commenting about the corruption scandal, especially from the Western states, because when you watch the response to the scandal, to the corruption that happened from within the Ukrainian state, it was not something that people would name as shocking reveal. It is rather something that they knew that might be happening, and they had certain connections, at least there's certain opinions about the people involved long before it was published.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like almost like a tacit acceptance, a lax acceptance of what's going on. You said it's trying to limit this scandal only to energy. We've had, not that long ago, there's also, let's say, little percolations of scandal potentially also in procurement and defense. We've had those issues as well. So is this, in your mind, for some observers, is this only scratching the surface of more corruption that's in Ukraine? Has this not been addressed as much as they were touting has been addressed? If I remember, not so long ago, the European Union said this enlargement report gave Ukraine high marks.
Honestly, I believe that President Zelenskyy has two different images. The one that is very frequently broadcasted to the Western audiences, and that is absolutely perfect in our minds, but also in the minds of Ukrainians. They consider him as the person who literally does a lot for the resistance of the state, for the fact that the Ukrainians have even arms to protect the country from the Russian invasion. But there is also an image that is projected mostly to the domestic audiences. And for regular Ukrainians, the wrongdoings of the presidency were visible. They were all not only limited, in my opinion, to the potential corruption that right now was revealed. They were also very much connected to the grab of power, especially also against the anti-corruption bodies. And recently we heard about the whole idea for the bill that would limit the independence of the corruption agencies, anti-corruption agencies in Ukraine. That sparked a lot of interest, but also protests across the country. This is also an issue related to the procurement, as you rightfully mentioned, but this is also, let's say, a centralization of power that not necessarily goes along with the rules of the Ukrainian constitution that was also very much and frequently commented upon by Ukrainians themselves. When we talk about the future of Ukraine, both in NATO and European Union, we shall actually focus on one particular thing. This is not only an aim in itself, that Ukraine becomes the member state of the European Union. the process is as important as the result. And the process is limiting the corruption, the process is to establish the institutions that could independently actually tackle those issues that are deep inside the Ukrainian state and that are unwelcome by other European nations, because the European nations are supporting Ukraine in its fight against the Russian imperialism, also because of their own interest. They want to see Ukraine as being a resistant country. They want to see Ukraine as also being well-functioning country. And the actions such as this, the scandals such as this, are not helping anyone.
Yeah, not helping, but at the same time, let's also give credit where credit is due. At the same time, these two corruption institutions, rather the anti-corruption bureaus, SAPO and NABU, I mean, they've done a lot to bring this to light, right? And this is something that back in the summer, right, it was almost, let's say, tried to be controlled and reduced by Zelenskyy. He stepped back, public anger was against him. So we have to give credit where it's due. I want to also tie this in to one of these individuals, Tymur Mindich, close associate of President Zelenskyy in the past, business partner, actually former business partner. Now, he's very core to all this. Now, he reportedly fled to Poland across the border just, I think, hours before this police raids actually happened. So I'm just wondering what that says. I mean, was there insider help? Is this another issue of, let's say, borders? I mean, what happened here? I mean, there's talk of a luxury taxi. Where is he now, if he is even still in Europe?
Look, he must have known about the whole situation. If not, he wouldn't be fleeing the way he did. That's one thing. The second thing is that he had to have support to cross the border, because if I'm not mistaken, the regulations are against this kind of situations, that a person who is also subject to conscription at this point, as Mindich is, would not probably be able to cross the border that easily if he's not supported by the certain administrative institutions of the Ukrainian state. And if I'm not mistaken, the gentleman has also the Israeli citizenship, so he probably fled to Israel. Those are the rumors, which is also, of course, also problematic from the point of view of investigations, because Israel is well known for not being a part of the extraditions, especially of its own citizens back to the countries where they would supposedly be prosecuted. So I believe that this whole situation does not play well in terms of the full reveal of what were the ties involved between Mr. Mindich and the president's office. And talking about the credit due, I do agree. Both NABU and the prosecutor's office that is responsible for the anti-corruption activities did a wonderful job. If not them, if not the support also given to the reforms of these institutions way back, because it's not a fresh thing, by both the European nations, but also the US, because those institutions were highly supported by the US. We wouldn't see what we are seeing right now. So the reveal of this corruption scandal. At the same time, though, I would only underline that there was a tension between those institutions and the president's office that was supposedly willing to limit the independence of those institutions. Those were the reasons for the protests, and we can also only ask ourselves a question: to what extent this tension is also right now maybe also a source of the reveal of the whole problem.
Yeah, and just before we close, one brief moment. If we're looking now towards lessons here, what was the takeaway? What can Ukraine learn from this, not just for energy, for other sectors? Just briefly as we wrap up.
I can only hope that the winter that comes will be as mild as it is possible, so that the current corruption scandal will not overlap with the problems of the regular citizens of Ukraine. Because if that happens, the domestic political situation of Mr. Zelenskyy would not be necessarily very favorable. And this is a signal for us, for the Western Europeans, that we should actually focus way more on, as I said, the process of bringing Ukraine closer to the European Union, to the standards of the European Union, not only the aim. And the Ukrainians shall also understand that factor, that this is not only all about the aim, but also the process of building institutions.
Yeah, and it looks like that process will continue, and it's going to be bumpy along the way. Look, thank you so much, Bartłomiej Kot. Always a pleasure. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here on World Talks, but there's much more here on TVP World, so don't go away.